As most of us age, we fortunately begin to figure some things out, right? This is really relevant in the arts, where it's often a difficult, sort of less prescriptive path that many of us follow. I remember being an undergraduate in college and just desperately trying to figure out, like, what do I need to do to succeed, to be able to kind of live this life around my creative practice. I realized pretty early on that that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to spend my time making art, thinking about art, and I didn't really know how to pay the bills, right? So this continued on into graduate school, and I would be studying, looking at art history, looking at my teachers, mentors, and it was mostly kind of the greatest hits, right? You'd open a book, and it would have been the biography of an artist with their greatest works exhibited all over the world. Some of these people were still faculty of mine. Many were historical artists, and it just made the whole thing seem too easy, and at the same time created that sense of a distance between where I was as a student and where these people were afterwards. So, with really no sense of what to do and no real clear job, I decided that I wanted to teach, right? I loved my time as a student, as an art student, and thought I would be decent at communicating my passion and what I had learned. So I decided to try to become an art professor. I immediately received feedback from my mentors that it was incredibly difficult to find faculty positions at the university and that it wasn't going to be successful. So I took them for face value, their comments, and I didn't bother applying to any university jobs. And I graduated at around 24 years old, or 25 years old with my degree, because I went directly from undergrad to grad school. So instead, I decided that I would target teaching at like the high school level. I thought I'd be more competitive. Of course, I had no teaching credentials at all, so I didn't really have a path to teaching in public schools. And I decided that the best plan for me was to teach at some kind of private school, because I didn't need the teaching degree. So, I had seen Dead Poet Society, and I, fantasized about finding a position like that and inspiring the students. And, it was just a very romantic vision. So I was pretty desperate, and this was typical of me, and maybe perhaps still typical of me. Instead of worrying about what jobs were offered, what listings were out there, I decided that I would get a book that listed every private school in the United States, and I would apply to every single school within, like, I forget exactly, it was like a 100-mile radius of where I was. I was located in Philadelphia, went to grad school. And so rather than looking if they had job opportunities, I just simply sent a cover letter and my resume and portfolio, like, and to every single school within again, whatever that radius was. And out of I think it was like over 100 applications I sent, or packets I sent out. Out of that, I got 2 campus interviews and I got 1 job offer. So you can imagine I was pretty excited. I was finishing up grad school and I actually had a job offer in the fall at this turned out to be very prestigious, really old prep school outside of Pennsylvania, outside of Philadelphia. And the school was a Quaker school, actually was founded in 1799. I won't mention the name, but you could probably do your own research and figure it out. And I went there to visit, and it was Dead Poet Society. It was this like beautiful, romantic campus, bright students, gorgeous grounds, and I was going to live there and be sort of on the floor with 100 young men, and at the time it just seemed like this incredible thing that I had gotten this job. So I started the position. I was with my current wife, but at the time my very serious girlfriend, and she traveled out to where I was and got an apartment near the school and pretty much changed her life to accommodate this. And I felt like I was well on my way. So I was supposed to teach the high school students, but also I needed to teach 1 middle school class. It was actually a class of 7th graders. The high school students were really similar to the undergraduates that I had helped teach when I was a teaching assistant in graduate school, and it was a pleasure teaching these students. They were motivated, bright, and it was fairly effortless, and I was really happy. I walked into the middle school class my first day, and literally within about 10 minutes had a panic attack. I just had no idea what to do. It was utter chaos. Nothing I could do to kind of constrain their energy and their sort of running around screaming. They were very privileged kids, so they had no sense of, me being their elder or garnering any respect. They were just, it was just total chaos. And I was determined to not be one of these teachers who screamed at the kids and created this really prescriptive, these are the rules, you're going to follow this. So I just floundered my first day or two and didn't know what I was going to do, and was quickly getting pretty miserable. Um, Eventually, I started thinking about how can I sort of use their energy in a more kind of constructive way. And so I came up with a couple techniques where we worked on some collages and let them pretty much use any kind of imagery they wanted from magazines. As you might imagine, as adolescents, the imagery tend to be there for shock value, let's just say. And at the same time, I had some of the students who were the most rambunctious, the most kind of disruptive, sort of assume some leadership in terms of trying to kind of lead the class and take some kind of ownership. And all this stuff was starting to work, and I was finally feeling like I had made some progress. So much so that I decided to invite in one of the vice principals or the principal of the middle school to sort of, evaluate me. And I was pretty starry-eyed and somewhat naive about all this stuff, and wanted to just become a better teacher, and was finally feeling good about that. And she walked in, and of course, the students were doing these wild collages that were probably overly sexualized because they're cutting up magazines they're bringing in from home. And to me, it was all, if everybody was respectful and, nobody was feeling offended, we just kept letting them kind of express themselves. Well, I was quickly called down to the vice principal, the middle school principal, and the headmaster, the whole school's office. And I was told in really no uncertain terms that I needed to be teaching them drawing with a pencil, and what they were doing was totally unacceptable. Um, I tried to plead my case and explain, how this happened. They were not interested, and I left pretty demoralized from that meeting. And I was, young and maybe a little rambunctious myself. So rather than just kind of toe the line and do what they asked, I wrote this ridiculous, in retrospect, letter of resignation, stating how this was, just I just couldn't abide by these this restrictive censorship. And I submitted the letter, and then called my poor now wife, telling her that we needed to leave kind of in a hurry. I had only been there a few months. I hadn't made it through the first term. This proved to be like incredibly disruptive for my life, as you can imagine, and had to get bailed out by family from this one. I learned a great lesson, that I need to curtail my impulsivity. And there were many other ways to navigate this, but that process, though, at the time was really rough, really rough. And I was also, I should say, struggling to teach things that really I felt were anything other than what I had learned as a student. So I felt like I was just kind of building more students to then teach more people to be students. Like I didn't really have any life experience as an artist yet. So that was also sort of, you know, partially contributing to my openness to resigning. I was just not happy and feeling pretty lost still. I was, really young. So it seemed like a pretty negative thing. And I left, went back to Philadelphia, tried waiting tables again, which is what I had done in college and grad school. I just couldn't emotionally do it. Unfortunately, my family bailed me out. And to deal with that situation, I learned from an uncle, and a friend of my uncle said I should look into computer graphics. And this is when the whole thing with computer graphics started for me. And I found this incredible passion for reading computer manuals and learning this. And this really set the path for me to get so into all this computational stuff. So bad news, I guess, bad story, good story at the same time. I don't think I would have come to the computer graphics nearly as soon had I been less impulsive and figured out a way of navigating that circumstance. So anyway, just wanted to share the story. I think probably many of our paths are much more bumpy than the kind of retrospective books and things we learned about our heroes, or people that are mentors. There was a lot more to the story than just this kind of smooth progression.